one thing you folks can certainly do is at the local level, come to meetings, city council meetings or county board of supervisors meetings, and express the concerns of the Muslim community. My colleague Zahra Baloo, who is with CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, is a voice for that. But it's great to have voices of folks who are not necessarily part of an organization per se, and talk about the kinds of concerns that Muslims have about surveillance and the chilling effect that it has on free speech and the fear it causes, the anxiety it causes in communities, because elected officials need to hear that. And what they'll do is they have a law enforcement person up there, like Greg Lucero, the chief of police, Richard Lucero, the chief of police in Fremont, saying, well, we need all this stuff. We need drones and everything. And it's going to help us catch bad criminals and fire safety, all these reasons. But we need Muslim voices to say, well, we're very concerned about this surveillance and the effect that it has on our community. So please go to local meetings and do that. I mentioned a little bit about, let's see, how am I doing on time? It's like an hour for everything. I'm going to leave lots of time for questions. I think I'll probably, I explained the Wikimedia case. I'm just going to move on to the other part, which is just more about not surveillance per se, but police encounters, and then also a little bit about airports. This is something what I'm going to say now is something I do in every talk I ever give, because I really think everybody in America should know what to do if you have an encounter with a police officer. And it can happen to the most law-abiding, respectable citizens in the world, especially if they are Muslim or they're a person of color. Basically, there were three things to say, and I have these memorized. And anytime you have an encounter with a police officer, three things to say. The first is, and this is asked of the officer calmly and respectfully, officer, am I free to go? If he says no, then you are being, quote unquote, detained, and you're not free to go. But in most cases, you are free to go. He wants to ask you questions, he wants you to get involved in a discussion with him, but you don't have to if you are free to go. So I would simply ask, officer, am I free to go? And if he does not say, no, you're not free, you have to stay here, then walk away. He might say something like, why, do you want to leave? Officer, I'm asking if I'm free to go. Am I free to go? You know, they try to make you feel like they have a million ways of intimidating people. They try to make you feel like if you don't cooperate, if you don't do the things that they want you to do, if you exercise your rights, you'll regret it. That's the way they try to make you feel. But you have rights. So you calmly assert your rights. That's what I recommend. I would not get into an argument with them, and I would never touch them. Don't ever touch a police officer. Even, well, that brings up the second one. I do not consent to a search. Just say that. It could be you could be a driver or a passenger in a car. You could be on the street. I do not consent to a search. Just say that calmly. The reason I say don't touch them is suppose they start patting you down and you're saying it calmly and they're still doing it. Don't push their hand away. Don't resist. And the general approach toward the police, even though you may be really angry and a lot of emotions come up, is to stay calm, assert your rights calmly, remember what happened, and we'll deal with it later. Right? So that's the approach. I'll also talk about rights to videotape police officers later. That's another thing that can happen, right? So when we're dealing with it later, if there's videotape, that's helpful, or even just audio. You know, a cell phone can be turned on and then not pointed at anybody, but the audio is recorded, right? That's part of what the cell phone's recording. So the second one is, I do not consent to a search, and I would just repeat it, right? Last time I gave a presentation, somebody said, well, what's the point if they're going to search you anyway? Well, the point is that you have said it, and when it's being dealt with later, You can say that you said it. And unless they want to lie and claim you didn't say it, that's important. You did not consent. Right? The third one is to say, I want to remain silent. It used to be that you could just be silent, but the courts have ruled not too long ago that you have to positively assert that, the fact that you want to remain silent. So you have to kind of say the words. So you just say, I want to remain silent. Then they try to make you feel like that's an admission of guilt. Wow, you want to be quiet. Okay. You know, like it's going to go hard on you. You were silent, you clammed up. You know, that they try to make you not be silent. But again, you just assert your right. I want to remain silent. You do have to identify yourself. So that's something that you have to do. So if you have a driver's license or other form of ID, you do have to identify yourself. So those are the three things. So I'll probably say them again a couple of times, but they are, officer, am I free to go? And if you're free to go, you don't need the other two, because you leave calmly. I want to remain silent after you've identified yourself. And I do not consent to a search. And you can say those things calmly over and over again, even as they are acting like you didn't say it. Just say it. It's important that you say it. If you're being given a traffic ticket, give your name and your birth date and sign the ticket. You can be arrested for not signing the ticket. Okay? Don't talk about your immigration status or place of birth. There's some things not to do. You have a constitutional right to disrespect an officer. You can literally give them the middle finger, but it's not a good idea. It escalates the situation. We want you to be safe. There's a type of license called an AB 60 license. They should be accepted by the CHP and all law enforcement people in California. It's a type of license which is an immigrant license. It's actually undocumented immigrants can get a license, a form of ID in California, and they can drive a car. If you ever are arrested and taken to a police station, don't give explanations or excuses or stories. And just in general, you're not trying to explain yourself or talk them out of it, whatever they're doing. They're just gathering information. Everything you say can be used to incriminate you. The thing to do is just be silent. That's your right. And don't let them make you feel like you're making a big mistake by being silent. It's good to have a lawyer with you, of course, if you were ever in a police station. Of course, a criminal conviction can have immigration consequences, so don't make any decisions without talking to a lawyer. And in particular, I would be sure not to sign anything unless you know exactly what it is you're signing. I've got some more things that have to do with being in jail and ICE and all that, and workplace raids, but I think those are more relevant to the Latino community. In fact, pretty much the rest of this. Okay, but I will talk about filming the police. You have a right to film or take pictures of the police. You absolutely do. Not everyone feels comfortable doing it, but you have that right. But there are some limitations. You can film or photograph in public spaces where you are lawfully present in a public space. If you're on private property, you can film and photograph the police, but the property owner has the final say, and they can impose limits. Okay? Private property is different. They cannot confiscate your video or your pictures without a warrant. They cannot take your cell phone from you. They can't force you to delete any pictures or video that you took with your cell phone. They can ask you to stop filming or taking photographs if you're interfering with their activities. So the way that may work is, and I've had this happen, I see a police officer with a person of color. I pull over, I approach him, and I film. I get in, usually within about 15 feet, and he says, "Sir, back up." I back up, I say, officer, is this far away? Is this far enough away? Is this far enough away? It's all in the audio portion. Finally he says, yeah. Or he stops talking to me, stops telling me to back up. And usually it's about 15 feet. The idea is that if you're interfering with what they're doing, that you're not allowed to do that. But usually about 15, the courts have not determined the distance. They have some discretion, but usually it's really, really hard for them to argue that if you are further than 15 feet away, which is usually far enough away to get a good view of what's going on, it's hard for them to argue that you're interfering with them. They might bark at you, they might make sarcastic remarks like, go ahead, shoot, you know, is this for candid camera? I mean, they say all kinds of things. But you just keep filming calmly, and you back up as much as they tell you that you need to. Sometimes people don't shoot a video because they think, well, it's too late, the bad thing already happened. It's still helpful. And we have an app, an ACLU app. It's called Mobile Justice CA, Mobile Justice California. It's an app you can download onto any iPhone or Android type device from the Apple Store or from, I forget what the Android one is called, but I have an iPhone. But anyway, what it does is it is a way for you to take, that when you take a video, if the police officer were to come up to you, grab the phone out of your hand and throw it on the ground and stop it or do something crazy, what would happen is you're taking video, you touch the screen, and the video that you took up to that point comes to the ACLU in the cloud. So we have it in the cloud. And there's nothing they can do to keep anything. So, for example, there was an incident, we know all these, the fascists are out there demonstrating. There was an incident in which a black man was using a spray can as a kind of flamethrower to back off these fascists who, rumor says, but it has not been verified, were threatening an elderly person. But what happened was, and this just came out yesterday, a American Nazi type guy pulled out a gun, a loaded gun, and fired in the direction of the black guy. That was an ACLU video. That video was recorded through the ACLU app for that state. So taking these videos is a good thing, and you absolutely have the right to do it. But remember, it's different on private property, and to back away if the officer asks you to back away. But even if you don't take a cell phone video, you can keep a record by writing down everything you remember: the officer's badge number, the patrol card number, what agency the officer was from, any other details, right? So was it city police? Was it Newark City Police? Was it Alameda County Police? You know, they're supposed to have a badge with a number or a name visible. We have cop police who have blacked out their badges, but that itself is a violation and doesn't generally happen. And then you can file a written complaint, right, about what happened. If a police officer is disrespectful to you, you can file a complaint about that, right, to your local police department. So generally, just a bit about airports. The agency that's relevant there is called CBT, the Customs and Border Patrol, the U.S. federal agency. They have a lot of power, a lot of power. They can pull you aside and detain you for questioning, and they can do it for 6-8 hours. You can file a complaint, but we can't really stop them from doing that. As things stand now, they are searching people's electronic devices. And they have clearly discriminatory criteria for people who they say are suspicious. So airports are kind of a special place where you really, frankly, have less rights, and they can treat you pretty badly. We're working on that. Just last week, we filed a lawsuit saying that before they search your electronic devices, they should have probable cause, which is the standard for a search warrant under the Fourth Amendment. So we would like that to happen. But It's just beginning, and I'm sorry to say these cases take time, and it will probably be at least a year or two before we can get to the point where the number of electronic device searches will be severely constrained. But what I would do is, if you're treated badly in an airport by the CBT people, is cooperate, but remember everything that happened. Contact the number that I will give you in a moment. I shall give it to you right now. And remember everything that happened. Write down a written account of what happened. Everything you can remember, all the details. And we can use those, right? The way that it works is, when we bring the cases, we have a plaintiff, right? So that would be the person who was wronged, and we look for the most egregious cases, right? Where it's least justifiable, and then a judge or a panel of judges decides. So every one of you is, who knows, a potential plaintiff. The thing about being an ACLU plaintiff is they're heroes. I can't say it any differently. They are heroes. But it is something that involves, your name may be in the paper, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're a hero. That's why you're a hero, So history is full of people who were ACLU plaintiffs. Like there was a movie called Gideon's Trumpet about a guy named Gideon, whose case we took, and it gave people the right to a public defender, right? Everybody gets to have a defender in court, because before that you couldn't have that. Even no matter how poor you are, the government will actually give you a lawyer in America, right? But Gideon's Trumpet, my gosh, guys. But if you ever do become a plaintiff in a case, boy, my hat is off to you. You guys are the real heroes. Certainly not me. So I promised a number. Well, I want to mention too also, I understand this is a largely Pakistani community. Our chairman of the board, our chairperson of the board is a Pakistani American, an ACLU of Northern California, named Megan Ray. She has a law practice in Palo Alto, and it's my honor to know her, but that's just a little side thing. But Megan Ray is her name, M-A-G-A-N, which is short for her full name, and R-A-Y is her last name. So this is a number. It's in San Francisco. This is our legal line. 415-621-2488. Again, that's 415-621-2488. And that is where you can talk about what happened. We don't get involved so much in individual legal cases. We're not really that kind of organization, but we're looking for plaintiffs in cases that have wide impact, right? So if what you were subjected to is happening to a lot of people, that is more interesting to us. If it's something the government is doing, that's of more interest to us, because again, we're about what the government can and can't do. So I think I'll stop at that point so we can leave lots of time for questions. I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal advice, and I've been really told by my handlers on the ACLU to be sure I don't give legal advice. And I might not be able to answer a question that you have, but if I can't, I will say so, and I won't make something up. So.